Sure. Sorry.
Okay. So the next speaker is Yusuke Yagi, and University of Connecticut. And the title is two places where we need plug-negation in update semantics.
So first of all, myself can be found in here. This is my website. So this QR code gives you the link to my, or maybe you can Google my name with the UConn, then you can get to my website. I don't use it. In fact, I thought this talk is for 30 minutes, and then I present the slides according to that, and then found out it's only for 20 minutes. I don't know how far I can go, but I'm going to do my best. So I want to talk about two phenomena rarely discussed in the literature of dynamic semantics. One of them is symmetrical presupposition filtering in disjunction, and the other one is presupposition projection from exclusive disjunction. I'm going to say a violation of genuineness will necessarily ensue in these two cases, and I want to claim that presupposition filtering and negation, which I call plug negation, is needed in the definition of disjunction, or some floating definition of plug negation is needed. Or maybe you can take it as evidence against the standard updated semantics, because this is one place where dynamic semantics that's significantly worse than trivalent logic, I think, as one of the reviewers suggested. By convention, I'm going to use phi of psi as a proper proposition, and phi p and psi p with a subscript p for proposition with a presupposition. And the primary focus of the study is a disjunction in the form phi of psi p or phi p over psi. So we know that phi of psi p presupposes p except when negation of the first disjunct entails the presupposition p. As Cotton observed in 1a, either John hates smoking or he stopped smoking, then we presuppose John used to smoke. Whereas in 1b, either John never used to smoke or he stopped smoking, there's no presupposition. So we also know that neg phi p presupposes p. So in 2a, John stopped smoking, we presuppose John used to smoke. And as well as in 2b, John didn't stop smoking, we presuppose John used to smoke. And I'm going to use updated semantics. So here's some, introduction or some, basic definition of updated semantics. In context is formalized as the state S, which is a set of words. And for proposition phi, S of phi gives you a subset of the initial state in which phi is true. So it's kind of, the first state is going to be like this, and then S of phi gives you phi words only. And then if phi has a presupposition p, it requires that p is true in every single word in the initial state S. So if the state is like this, where phi p is one of them, phi neg p is the other, neg phi p, blah, 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 something like that, then we want to check if p is true in every single word, which is not the case in this case. So S of phi p is not defined. It is going to be defined if the state is, it looks like this, where p is true in every single word in the initial state. Now, the crucial case in this talk is the disjunction, right? In disjunction, the definition looks like this in the standard dynamic semantics, which I mean, Bruin, Eccleston, and Veltman. Here, we have two updates. One of them is the update by the first disjunct phi. The other one is the update by the negation of the first disjunct after the update by the second disjunct. Okay. So in a sense, when we are thinking about the second disjunct, we are thinking about the words where phi is false. So by diagram, let's say the initial state is like this. Then first we check S of phi, then we get a subset of the initial state. And then next we check S neg phi. So we are kind of like limiting our attention to the neg phi walls in here. And then we check if S psi p is defined. In this case, psi p is not defined, right? Because p is not true in every single word, So we want to kind of eliminate this particular word where p is false and phi is also false. So I mean, in effect, it means the p must be true throughout neg phi words in the initial state. That it means, or that is meant in this definition of this update by disjunction. So going back to the data, U1B, as you can see by seeing from the constituents, we know that neg phi entails P, or like it's always the case that neg phi, if neg phi is the case, then P is true, right? It's just tautology. So that is always defined, hence there's no presupposition in the case of 1B. What about 1A? As I said, this has to be the case that the P presupposition of the second disjunct must be true throughout a neg phi world, which means that we have to presuppose neg phi then P, which is in fact weaker than the actual presupposition we observe, because we feel like 1A presupposes the P in unconditional form, but we only predict conditional presupposition in here. This is going to provide a problem which I don't have any answer for, but this is shared by almost any account of dynamic analysis or tri-button logic. So let me ignore this one. Now here's the issue. So we also know that when we recently have some experimental confirmation about this observation. But we also know that even if the first disjunct has a presupposition P, this presupposition is filtered in the same circumstances. For instance, if we have if psi, the negation of, sorry, this is wrong. Sorry, this part is wrong. Sorry, it means neg psi entails P, and it's totally wrong. Sorry about that. So the phi P of psi presupposes P except when neg psi entails P. So 3 is just kind of swapping the order of disjunct from the previous example. But in this case as well, negation of psi entails the presupposition of phi. Hence, there's no presupposition in here. And this data was, in the first place, this data was kind of under controversy. If this is really the case, also Carton also mentioned about it, but he didn't commit too much on it. But recently we have experiment which says this is in fact the case among native speakers. I'm not going to talk about this, but we should also actually consider this case where the disjuncts have conflicting presuppositions, like if either the king of Uganda is now opening a parliament or the president of Uganda is conducting a ceremony, which presupposes that there is a king or a president in Uganda. I cannot talk about it today, but it's worth thinking about. So for 3, going back to 3, phi of psi, we want to have the definition of disjunction like this, where negation of the second disjunct is going to be kind of context for the first disjunct. So the question is, do we need these 2 separate definitions for disjunction? Because previously we had this, right, where the second disjunct has context, has neg phi as a context of its update, but in here we have in here we have kind of the other way around definition. So could we have more general definition of it? What about this one? Neg psi is going to be the context for phi, and then neg phi is going to be the context for psi. It's not a good starter because this is exclusive disjunction, which is one of them. Might be okay. But what's worse, we have to predict unconditional, the presupposition to unconditionally project to in any cases. There's no presupposition filtering in this definition. So let me show you this one. So as Maya and Romoli observed in the Salt paper, I believe, an exclusive disjunction phi or bar psi p or phi p or the psi projects p unconditionally and always. So if you want to draw a strong cleaning truth table, it's going to be something like this. This is exclusive disjunction, where if the truth value is going to be 0 if both of the disjuncts are true. And in the case of one of the disjunct is undefined, the entire disjunction is going to be undefined, which means effectively that presupposition projects always. So the same is true for affidavit semantics. If you define something like this, where this is exclusive disjunction, right? And we can easily see that presupposition always projects. Suppose that psi has a presupposition p, then we have to calculate S of neg psi p and phi. But we already know that S neg psi p has to presuppose p, right? And if we have something like S, if we have phi has a presupposition, then as we know that S neg phi p has to presuppose P, so P project anyways. And this problem is in fact linguistic. It's not a logical problem because we in many languages we have a obligatorily exclusive disjunction. English either or is one of them. Japanese kaka dochiraka is probably another one. French soa is one of them as well. So there's lots of like obligatorily exclusive disjunction in here. And in 1B as well is a problem. If we have to take it as exclusive, then why don't we have presupposition to project? Now, let's suppose the presupposition projects in this case in 1B. And we can see that phi and P contradict each other, right? Because phi says John never used to smoke and P says John used to smoke. So it's a contradiction. So if P projects, 1B entails phi, right? Because, if we project 1B entails psi, because, right? Because, if P projects, we have to presuppose that John used to smoke. So phi cannot be true in this case. So we have to have psi to be true. This is a violation of genuineness, right? Because we have to, because genuineness says in the case of phi or psi, then both disjunct to be at least possible or as a lively possibility in the context. So in the case of like 1B, if P projects unconditionally, we have to presuppose that phi is impossible. But in that case, that's a violation of genuineness. So how can we avoid it? So this is, sorry, just summary of that. So symmetrical filtering is kind of hard to define in up-to-date semantics, which is in fact, as I said in the beginning, which is in fact kind of like a weak point of dynamic semantics, I believe, because say strong clean disjunction correctly predicts symmetrical filtering, unlike up-to-date semantics. But exclusive disjunction is a problem for everyone because we always have violation of genuineness if we use obligatorily exclusive disjunction with a presupposition. So how can we solve it? I'm gonna propose one solution. If you have a better idea, I'm really happy to hear that. So let me take a first step of the problem. So we have actually at least two negations for in trivalent logic. One is Hall negation, I'll call. Hall and plug is from Cotton's terminology. Hall negation just projects presupposition over the pre-adjacent phi. We can also define plug negation where which cancels the presupposition of the pre-adjacent. Right. So even when phi p is undefined for p being false, then minus phi p is still true in this definition. So the bivalence of p minus phi p does not require p to be true. So the presupposition is kind of canceled or ignored. So the negation of P propositional operator semantics we saw earlier emulates the effect of the Hall negation, but we can also define plug negation. And this definition is pretty ugly, and we should be able to have a better one. But the effect is something like this. So if the initial state is something like this, where we have three worlds, then minus phi p collects the world where phi p is false or undefined. So this is like this. In this world, phi p is false, and in this world, the phi p is undefined. Okay, so the idea is that we can kind of like freely use this plug negation in the definition of disjunction when we want to. So let's say in the case of 3, we have a plug negation in the second disjunct, or the context of the second disjunct. And so we want to like prevent P from projecting from here. So we want to kind of cancel presupposition in here. So we're gonna first calculate neg psi, then phi p, then we're gonna get something like this. This is boring. It's something routine work in here. We actually can derive correct presupposition in here, but crucially, if you use plug negation in here, we don't have to consider the presupposition projection. So we kind of cancel presupposition in here, so we don't have to let P project. So we gotta get these three walls, and crucially, we can also include this world where phi P is undefined because of P being false. And then we can, after that, we can update context by psi, and then finally we get these three walls survived after the entire update. Now we can swap the phi, we can swap the plug negation and the Hall negation in here in order to derive the correct presupposition projection phenomena in 1B, right? which is good because we have one kind of like one general definition, and then we can kind of say, oh well, maybe sometimes we want to use a plug negation. So summarizing it, so we saw that if we have exclusive disjunction definition, P projects unconditionally, which is not a great result. So I said we can use a plug negation to predict a correct presupposition projection behavior. And I want to say that plug negation lets avoid a violation of genuineness. And I want to say further, if time allows, I want to say, the plug negation can only be used as a last resort to avoid a violation of genuineness. But I don't know if I have time to talk about it. As a bonus, if we want it, a conditional presupposition can be derived. So 11 is the data where we actually have a conditional presupposition from disjunction. It goes something like either John is not a scuba diver or he forgot to bring his wetsuit, which people say it presupposes if John is a scuba diver, he has a wetsuit, which is in fact conditional. So if we want to have a conditional presupposition, we can just use a plug negation in the as a background of a first disjunct, then we can derive it. 4 minutes should be enough. So we want to constrain plug negation, of course, because I initially said we can just freely use plug negation, but it's not restrictive enough. So in order to maximize false viability of my proposal, I want to dare to say that the plug negation only shows up when genuineness would be violated otherwise. So how to formalize this idea? Well, we can just probably say it's pragmatic constraint. Pragmatically, we want to throw plug negation in the definition of disjunction in order to avoid genuineness. But we can probably pursue some semantic path for that. So let's say we want to encode genuineness as a defineness condition of disjunction, which I meant that that disjunction is only defined if both possibilities are not vacuous. So I want to define something like NE, which is used by Maria Aloni's paper, and then this gives you S as is if S is not empty, but it's undefined otherwise. So the NE checks if each possibility is lively, right? Because if neg psi then phi is empty, then that possibility is not lively because it's impossible, right? Now, in the case of either John stopped smoking or he never used to smoke, let's say let's focus on the second disjunct. Then if we compute this part, neg phi p then psi then NE, it's always undefined because the update by the first two things, neg phi p then psi, it's going to be vacuous, right? So I want to say that plug negation is only kicked in when we want to avoid this kind of unnecessary undefinedness in the update. Now the remaining issue. So in the scuba diver case, we want the plug negation in order to derive, to have the conditional presupposition. But there is no contradiction between disjuncts and presupposition. So I don't know why it's possible. And in fact, I don't know if the observation that we have a conditional presupposition is robust enough among native speakers, because there's only one paper which discussed it as far as I know. So I'm happy to have feedback about it as well. So conclusion. In this talk, we tackled symmetrical presupposition filtering, which we recently drew attention among people. And we also have unwanted presupposition projection from exclusive disjunction. I proposed plug negation can be used as a repair strategy. And maybe plug negation is constrained by defineness of disjunction. I think the conclusion equals the claim by Beaver and Kramer, which says there's no one single definition of disjunction that accounts for all the projection behaviors, including symmetrical definition or the conflicting presupposition cases. And I think this proposal has to be encoded within what is called floating A theory, which is also proposed by Beaver and Kramer, but this is kind of a future work. After all, I think especially the problem for exclusive disjunction is a problem for everyone. So I think a better idea is needed. I mean, better than mine is, I think, needed. So pretty happy to hear about that. Thank you so much.
that. Do you have any question, comments?
Oh, I was right then.
There's no question. You're right.
I was right. There's just a question or suggestions. I was not right. Sorry.
I have a small comment actually. So, if I understand you correctly, you said about the provision problem that it happens with every dynamic theory or something like that, right?
So the proviso problem is what?
Is that it applies to any?
I think so. Yeah, except for DLT.
Yeah, except for the.
Yeah, except for DLT. That's a big except. Yeah, except for DLT. Yeah. So yes, except for DLT. Yes, as I said. Okay. Let me clarify for the sake of DLT people. As I said, the proviso problem, which so proviso problem is something like we only predict conditional presupposition for disjunction or conditional as well. This applies to almost every single dynamic theory, except for DLT. So DLT, for instance, you cited Bandensat in your talk, I guess, right? And the Bandensat, for instance, wanted to solve this problem by saying that in DLT, in fact, this problem doesn't happen. But for DLT people, conversely, the conditional presupposition is going to be a problem by default, right? So I mean, DLT people, in fact, or Guats, for instance.
Not really.
Oh, not really.
Yeah, in DLT you can derive one presupposition actually, and if there even can be ambiguity whether it's conditional or not.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, that's great. For instance, Philip Schlenker had a recent paper in order to derive conditional presupposition within DLT system. So maybe DLT is better. That might be a conclusion.
Thank you.
Very simple question. Like, since we're here 1A, is that true?
What do you mean?
That presupposes that John used to smoke.
That's what literature says, I guess.
Well,
but
okay,
what do you think about it?
Everybody question the literature.
Okay.
John hates smoking or not.
Like, isn't that what John? Everyone's smoking except John, and he looks unhappy about it. And he's either unhappy because he hates smoking, and he always has, or because he quit smoking and he's like got the tobacco pangs. That's
you.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I also thought this way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, so I don't know why is that the exact example that
It is not
comes from
exact
somewhere?
example. It's not exact
So maybe
example.
this is a
Isn't that a kind of bad
version of
example?
the
Yeah.
example. Yeah. Because there's something about John hating smoking is a way.
Right,
It's kind of
right.
either he's
Yeah.
not a scuba diver or he forgot his suit. I feel like it kind of maps onto that example.
So I think the exact example that Cotton observed is something like let's say either John doesn't have any children or all of his kids are bald.
What?
I mean, this is why I don't want to use this example because it doesn't make any sense. But what does anyone have a better example in this? Okay. And I think this is what literature says. I mean,
what?
Yeah, it was just a pure data question. So I'm not alone in thinking that in fact does not presuppose.
so you feel like there's no presupposition.
Yeah,
for
I
this.
feel like
Yeah.
the first disjunct, it suffices to cancel the projection of the presupposition from the.
Oh, so you feel like because if John, your idea is that if John hates smoking, then he has never smoked, and that I guess that is why, right?
And
Yeah.
that
Okay.
kind of silly context I provided,
Yeah.
I think makes it pretty.
So probably you can just I don't know. Probably you can just use some irrelevant proposition.
Although I think you're introducing extra concepts. Many smokers hate smoking.
True, right? Yeah.
So
True, right?
you're doing some pragmatic strengthening there.
Yeah, seriously, I think so. Because you're kind of taking like proposition being John hates smoking, being equivalent to John has never smoked in the context.
So what if you
sense.
just do either John hates bananas or he stopped smoking?
Yeah.
I feel like these semantics examples.
Either John hates bananas or he stopped smoking.
Right.
Then do we get the presupposition?
We definitely don't get any pragmatics.
Yeah, so that's a serious question. If you say something like John hates bananas or he stopped smoking, we should predict to presuppose that John used to smoke. I don't know. I don't have any intuition on it.
I actually think that implies that he's
Yeah, it's the relevance of hating smoking. to
Yeah.
Having ever smoked that, for me, cancels the presupposition.
I think that's a in general methodological problem, because if you want disjunction as a whole to make some sense, you have to use some relevant propositions, and then you will have some pragmatic enrichment which cancels presupposition. And then if you use some irrelevant presupposition, it doesn't make any sense. Like hating banana and stop smoking. Why do you have to juxtapose these two relevant propositions?
Well, clearly, because only when you have the taste of bananas in your mouth does the cigarette taste good.
Okay. Okay. If you have that assumption, then okay, probably.
Either John is out of money or he stopped smoking. Like, you don't see a cigarette.
Does that sound right? Yeah.
And he's either run out of the ability to buy cigarettes.
Oh, that's
or
great.
he's-
That's a great
that is
example.
relevant.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's only I'm gonna custom make. Stop it.
Okay, we have
Absolutely.
to-
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Well, we need
For
to
the
stop.
data collection. No problem. Thank you so much.
Doesn't anyone have any
I don't think so.
comments or suggestions? Okay, if that's the case, let's thank the speaker again.
Thank you so much.